While initially Cyberpunk 2077's technical issues and bugs were at the forefront of player concern, their removal has turned players' attention towards the game's various elements. It didn't come as much of a surprise that they found little depth to the gameplay and story compared to what was insinuated in the few E3 trailers we got. Much of the game feels underdeveloped and was likened to a Fallout game, only with 10 times better graphics but 1/10 of the content, systems and depth that made that franchise successful. It's ironic because in its current state the game mirrors the caricatures of unmoderated capitalism it presents in-game, and falls short on conveying the deeper themes it wants to present within its side quests. Not only that, but Night City's vastness gives off the impression that it's only the tip of the iceberg. The only problem is when you look under the surface, you realize it's bigger on top than it is beneath. And the shame of it is, if you're perceptive enough and explore the game thoroughly, you will find the remnants of the RPG game it was supposed to be before it was reclassified by CD Projekt Red leading up to its release as an action-adventure game.
What makes it worse is that it would be so easy and simple to drag some elements that are already in the game, transform them into something better, and have an overall better experience. Yet CDPR in the 3 years the game has been out have not decided to re-implement any of these missing elements or improve the game in any meaningful way, besides the bug fixes and the occasional bit of free content like cars and Johnny Silverhand's reskin. In this video, we will cover which elements of the game are lacking, how this brings down the game's quality, and how it also hurts the narrative themes and world building. We will then present the ways in which CDPR can make these elements better, how they can be implemented, and how this will overall improve the game's quality, world building, and narrative themes. For how well designed the city is, it does an exceptionally good job of masking its shallowness. NPCs are often sitting in complete silence in alleyways, even though they are capable of having randomized conversations. Despite the fact police often pop up around the city and gang members are plentiful, they don't interact with each other at all unless they're tied to incompleted events, or prompted by player action. It feels lifeless and bland despite the density of the crowd, making it feel more uncanny than it does dystopian. It's a shame considering GTA Online has various random open world events that occur that give you something to do. You can steal drugs from drug dealers and sell them off, intercept cargo convoys, steal caches, and more. This is the type of stuff I would expect to be able to do in the dystopian world with an deep underbelly of organised crime. Yet what is here feels more like an unnatural fever dream. Even small details like the firing range in these apartment complex being inaccessible after completing its associated side quest is strange considering the array of guns you can acquire. Apartments are the biggest offender in terms of activities, as most of them are just cutscenes. It's ironic that Cyberpunk caricatures overzealous, unmoderated capitalism where the products are cheaply made for profit's sake. Yet the game is exactly that. So to help it steer away from this association with its own satire, I have a couple of solutions. Different kinds of gangs already exist within the game, and there are hostile states and friendly states to the NPCs. There is already a scenario where police have shootouts with the gangs that are tied to the police scanner missions, so a system could be put in place to enable random firefights to break out between certain gang members or police officers. This could be then tied to a reworked street cred system. Depending on which side you decide to engage with first in these firefights will then determine which gangs you will gain affinity with. Then, depending on how much affinity you have with certain gangs, will determine whether they attack you on sight or whether they let you be. Your life paths can then be tied into the system, giving you affinity with certain gangs from the outset. Each section of the city has its own gang turf, and the affinity could be seen when hovering over these sections of the city. Even companions you romance could affect your affinity to certain gangs. This would greatly improve the open world dystopian themes due to the abundance of gang warfare, due to you experiencing the underbelly of organised crime firsthand, and even being able to participate in it should you choose. It would make the world of the game feel more alive and give it more depth, and also improve the already present street cred system. If it's too much hassle to tie it to companion quests and such, they can just tie it to the life pass instead and let it play out from there. It would just go that extra mile to immersing you in the world and giving you something dynamic to play around with, even after all is said and done. The same can be said for the extra activities. Simply opening up the firing range door and adding an invincible target that takes damage to test out the weapons that you have would give the location purpose. Turning some of the activities in your apartment into actual minigames you could play against your companions would be an excellent addition too, and couples well with Reggie's next section on companions. Small changes like these would massively help in deepening the shallow ocean that Cyberpunk 2077 currently is, and would alleviate comparisons of the game's unfinished nature to that of the caricatures of capitalism it presents within itself.
The companion quests were certainly the main highlight of the game for me, yet they were also the part that left me the most disappointed. For a game that marketed itself as the next generation of open-world RPG games, it is leagues behind Skyrim, which released over a decade ago, in terms of its companions. You only need look to the conclusions of Cyberpunk's companion quests to see what I'm talking about. Considering on multiple occasions you partner up with a fair few of these characters in combat situations, my immediate expectation when it came to these companion quests was that I'd unlock the ability to have them accompany me on my adventures. You can imagine my reaction when I completed Judy's questline, only to realize she was rooted in place, staring out of a window with no more dialogue options to explore. The positive emotional connection I had built up with this character during her side quests almost instantly gave way to disappointment, anger, and sadness. A lot of the companion side quests present this theme of finding a treasure worth more than any other material possession in a dystopian society where everyone is out for themselves and no one can be trusted. To then not receive this treasure as a reward for completing these side quests kills any thematic messaging associated with these quests and any incentive to do the others. When considering how to turn this element of the game into a positive that doesn't throw away its climax, I wanted the solution to be one that looks doable without too much hassle or effort, in the hopes that if CD Projekt Red does see this video, they may actually consider its implementation. The solution I have to offer is twofold. One has already been made in mod form, called Judy Romanced Enhanced by Deceptius on Nexus Mods, which contains a bunch of different states Judy can be in when you go to her apartment. This ranges from eating in the kitchen to sleeping and showering. It even adds the option to hug and kiss her. This could be expanded to the various apartments as well, should they decide to add my second suggestion, Companion AI. Editor Reggie here. I recently saw a Reddit post talking about the companions in Cyberpunk, which shared the opinion that the reason there are no AI companions in the game is because you are the companion. You spend the game helping out various romanceable characters with setting their own affairs straight, hence you being the companion in their story. While I do agree with this sentiment that you are the companion in their stories, it's no excuse for there not to be AI companions in the game, because by the end of their quest lines, Judy and Panam talk about you setting your affairs straight before things advance. It only seems fair that they should be able to tag along with me to return the favor. This is already present within various missions that involve combat with these NPCs. Simply have it be a toggleable dialogue option and switch their AI states to following the player and engaging in combat with any hostile NPCs that attack V. All they'd need then is an option to dismiss them back to their original states at the end of their companion questline, teleporting them back when they are out of sight. Not only would this hammer home the narrative themes of the companion side quests, but it would also make them feel more rewarding and immediately broaden the depth of the game with a couple of small changes and additions.
Going into Cyberpunk 2077's second act unlocks much more of what Night City has to offer. Though, the shame of it is, much like the city and the open world I mentioned in my previous section, these extra activities feel shallow and simplistic. Throughout much of your playtime, you will be working with various fixers who give you differing missions and activities to complete. There are 3 different extra activity types: the Night City Police Department scanner hustles, cyber psycho bosses, and general gigs that are given by various different fixers. With the police scanner hustles, they follow a couple of very basic formulas: kill all enemies within an area, loot an item from a specific container, or loot a cache that has a specific quest item. The activity only requires you to fulfill this specific condition and doesn't require you to do anything else. It feels strange just to loot the component and have the quest complete, yet the criminal gang guarding the item doesn't need detaining, which leaves a bit to be desired in terms of their depth. Cyber psychos are a bit similar in this regard. Cyberpsychosis is an in-game disease that makes people with lots of implants and cybernetics go crazy. You can encounter quite a few cyberpsychos in-game, and each tend to have some kind of environmental storytelling and tragic backstory to them. Their fights are quite individualistic to how their implants operate, like some having power armor, or implants that make them a crack shot with a sniper. While these fights can be pretty engaging, some are just over too quickly, and the uniqueness gets lost because they die before you can experience it, which again leaves much to be desired. Gigs are the one thing I honestly have little to criticise about, as these missions are quite fleshed out. They're like the police scanner missions but with extra steps in depth. They vary in nature in terms of what you do, from being a hitman or thief for hire, to conducting sabotage, recovery of belongings, or hostage rescue. You can immediately tell why they're better than the one-step police scanner missions, which is why the only criticisms that I have for gigs is that they're non-respawnable. This non-respawnable criticism also applies to the NCPD police scanner missions and cyber psychos, as realistically all of these activities are broad and detached enough from the main story that they could be repeatable. This continues the pervading theme of irony in that Night City is presented as the city of opportunity, yet these opportunities run out. It links back to my original point of the world being wide as an ocean but deep as a puddle, as these activities are quite standout features of the world. Their non-replayability leaves much to be desired for a city supposedly teeming with life and opportunity.
The simple solution to all of this is to make these respawnable. Considering there are 156 different NCPD scanner hustles, a set amount of them could be respawned every in-game day. The enemies that are a part of these missions don't actually respawn, so having these missions be replayable would already do a lot to make the world seem active and lively, with the potential rewards of randomized loot. Potentially also adding extra objectives to these, like clearing out the enemies from the area, doing it stealthily for a bonus, or finding more than one item within the area, might also drastically improve their quality. Given the nature of cyberpsychosis, there could be a system implemented which makes a random NPC enter a psychotic rampage and attack anything it sees close to the player's vicinity. They could be given a random cyberpsycho loadout and scaled to the player's level to make the fight more engaging. Once killed, they can have a variety of randomized loot on them. Not only would this create loads more replayability to the game, but it would also give a reason to traverse the city. As well, it would make it much more accurate to how the disease behaves in-game, further expanding the world's depth. With gigs, it's honestly just a case of making them replayable. There are over 80 gigs available to the player from various different fixers. All they'd need to do is add the option to call a fixer and request a job, then once their job is complete, place them on a cooldown timer for a set amount of time. After a certain amount of in-game time has passed, they can be called again to request another gig. This would prevent calling a singular fixer for the same couple of gigs over and over, and maintain some form of variety while keeping the world interesting and active. These changes would add to the previously mentioned point of a dystopian feel to the world due to the widespread nature of organized crime. This would feel more believable and would be much more of an active theme rather than one that fades over time. The most disappointing part of Cyberpunk 2077 came with the expectation of a next-generation open-world RPG game, only to be hit with the reality of it being a mediocre first-person action-adventure shooter.
The next generation of open-world adventure.
What made every session so difficult to brunt and bear was just how obvious the discarded RPG elements were. A lot of the solutions for the issues presented within this video were made during the first play session I had with friends almost 3 years ago, on day one of its release. It surprises me that all these years later, all that's changed is how the police system operated. What makes it worse is how the game was marketed. They made the conscious decision to change how they presented the game, knowing there was a lot of demand, despite the fact they hadn't fully fleshed out the RPG elements. Instead of fleshing these out, they decided to label it as an action-adventure game, and release it despite how unnaturally merged these two genres are within the game. The story can be certainly attributed to an action-adventure game, but outside of it exists a bare-bones open-world RPG game for no apparent reason. For how easy we found it to remedy this, it's odd that so long after launch, none of these elements have been re-implemented. This is the most overt case of Cyberpunk 2077's capitalistic caricatures mirroring itself. The corporation's negative and predatory aspects are exaggerated within the game to critique overzealous capitalism, yet the game in the real world mirrors these, with the incomplete nature of the product and CD Projekt Red's non-disclosure agreements with major review outlets about the true nature of the game.
CDPR are in a unique position where these issues can be quite easily remedied with a few small tweaks and additional implementations. For how easy it was to notice the absence of these key RPG features, it is equally baffling and disappointing nothing was done to re-implement them 3 years on. We took great deliberation on how we considered the remedies for these problems, making sure they were as simplistic as possible for the most amount of gain. With the open world, it's a case of attributing districts with a gang, adding affinity stats with the gangs, pitting hostile NPCs in a shootout scenario with one side becoming friendly depending on which side the player engages in, and once the enemy NPCs die, you gain affinity with the faction you assisted. From there, you set gang NPCs hostility states depending on affinity. With companions, it's as simple as adding 2 dialogue options that change the companion NPC states between following or its default state after their respective side quests. With extra activities, police scanner missions can just be respawned at set times during the day, with which ones respawning being randomized. Gigs simply require dialogue options from all the fixers which give you a randomized gig when you call them, and then have that fixer's dialogue option be put on a cooldown for a set amount of in-game time. Lastly, with Cyber Psychos, it's just a matter of randomly giving a crowd NPC a randomized Cyber Psycho kit, and then have them become hostile for boss health bar. Again, there is evidence within the game itself that these fixes can be implemented due to the fact something is already there. These suggestions just improve upon what has already been presented and offer a more lively and active world. There are some genuinely great thematic beats within the game that get majorly hampered due to the issues we presented within this video. The only roadblock is whether CDPR has the willingness to improve the game beyond reflecting its in-game caricatures and stopping short of excellence. With Phantom Liberty coming out soon, I am hopeful these changes might be something included as presented here, or in their own way, within or after the DLC's release.
It could be that they dedicate a small team towards putting fixes or extra content like this within the game as patches to maintain interest and even garner more sales. Even though they are relatively simple and easy changes to make, I reckon that they would massively impact the game, and it would be a missed opportunity otherwise to leave such an astonishingly beautiful open world in the state it is currently in. Thank you for watching. Working with Giggles on this video was a new experience for me, and it turned out awesome. I want to give a massive thank you to him for helping me on this video.
Thanks for letting me help with the video, man. 'Tis always a pleasure. Except when there's audio issues, of course.
He's also getting a second shout out for being the only top tier patron as of current. But if you want to unlock all of the perks and extra content he has, pay a visit over at patreon.com/The Rational Reggie Show. Liking and sharing the video also helps out massively, and if you hit that subscribe button, then I will likely see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Air tune, that's sick.